I used to live in Orlando, in a somewhat shady part of town. The five deadbolts on the apartment door should have raised some flags. But I was a student, and there were a lot of students in the area, and I was young and not yet wary. Our less than nice part of town bordered a very nice town. There was a 4 to 6 lane road that ran through the area, and a jogging path that ran alongside of it. Our apartment complex was right next to the road and the trail, and a little further down was my local gas station, where I would walk once a day to buy cigarettes and other things. Because of the layout, it was easy for me to walk out my door, step on the path, and walk the 10 minutes to the gas station. Walking through the complex took a bit longer. I often ended up taking this walk at night. Sure, I was a girl walking alone, but the path bordered this huge road with a lot of traffic, and right across the street was a busy strip mall with fast food places and such, so it wasn't like a dark path in the woods or anything. And hey, I always brought pepper spray, paid attention to my surroundings, etc. So one night I head to the gas station around 11 p.m. As I'm walking along the path, I hear something behind me. Turning around, I notice about 30 yards behind me, there's a car on the trail, like it had to have pulled off the road and pulled up onto the path. I'm stopped and staring, and a guy gets out of the driver's side and starts walking around the grass between the trail and the road as though he's looking for something. Oh, I think. Something must have fallen out of his car and he's pulled over to search for it. I keep walking. As I'm walking, I'm hearing something again behind me. I stop and turn. Guy is now 15 yards behind. Still no headlights. And I turn as he stops the car. Or he stops the car as I turn. Again he gets out and looks like he's searching for something in the grass. But he's closer now, and I'm a little creeped out. I'm not close enough to the gas station, so I pick up the pace. The next time I turn, he's even closer. He stops again when I look at, but he doesn't get out of the car now. I don't want to just take off to let him know he scared me, but I am now power walking. My pepper spray is in my hand, but what does pepper spray do against a car? I throw a look over my shoulder and he's only a few yards behind me. He doesn't stop this time. The distance is closing. Fuck it. I take off. The judge I judge the distance to the gas station to be too far along the trail. But there's some trees and stuff on the other side of the path from the road, so I bolt into them, and through a little ditch towards the lights of the station, which is now right in front of me. I felt like the dude in the car was going fast. I look behind me as I'm running through the ditch, and I see him through the space in the trees. His car slows down, and he's just cruising along the section of path I left. I continue my sprint to the gas station, where I know I'll feel safe. The owners and the employees all know me. I make it out front and I'm catching my breath, watching the part of the jogging path that meets the intersection. I see the car clearly for the first time. It's one of those brown car truck combos with a tan stripe along the side. Dude drives up the trail to the intersection, flips his lights on, and floors it into the main road, disappearing. Up until that point, I was running on a mix of adrenaline and feeling that maybe I'm being stupid but better safe than sorry feeling. Once I'd made it inside the gas station, I pretty much broke down shaking. To this day, I still don't know what that guy's intentions were. Maybe he didn't even see me and was just looking for something. Maybe he was planning to hit me with his car and drag me off. Maybe he was an asshole that was just trying to scare me. Either way, I had my boyfriend come get me from the gas station, and I've never walked alone again since that night. My story starts when I was 10, and my parents built a house in the next village. We always lived in the countryside, and my mom wanted her own house. So when a farmer gave up a field in the next village, my parents bought some ground to build their own home. So did a lot of other people. A few months passed, and when the working on our house finally began, some other people already had their houses. Whenever I visited the construction site, there was this young boy, probably my age, sitting on his bike staring over. He wouldn't come over and talk, just watching from a distance for like half an hour and then he would leave, to come back again later. We moved in and I discovered that he lived in a house in the next street parallel to ours, but I could see right over as there was just one other house between. He was outside all day riding his bike. I didn't think much of him. He usually played with the other boy from my street, Dennis. He would wait hours outside of Dennis's house until he had time to play. When I asked my mom about it, she told me the name of the boy, Jonas, and that he had some mental issues, so I should be nice. That was the first time he appeared creepy to me. Every time I came home from school, he was already waiting for Dennis. I had to walk past him, and he would stare at me until I entered our house. It continued to be like that for some years until one day when Dennis's father yelled at Jonas to get lost, that Dennis wouldn't come out to play, that Dennis didn't want to play with him, and that he should stop waiting in front of the house. When the door shut, Jonas started screaming for Dennis for 30 minutes until he gave up. Now he started roaming the entire village. One day, when I was playing with my best friend and our younger sisters in some woods near the village, he drove past us. I tried to ignore him, but Mimi, my best friend's sister, invited him to play with us. We were building a treehouse. He came over, but wasn't helpful and just talked about tanks and army jets. When we went to my best friend's place for dinner, we told him that he couldn't come, but he followed us and waited for me and my sister to go back home. I'm glad she was there that day. Some more years passed and we just randomly saw him in the streets. When I was 16, I started a job where I delivered newspapers every weekend. I had to walk the same route every Saturday, and after some weeks I would casually walk into him during my tours. Then twice, then 3 times. He was following me and always passing my route on the same places. It made me so uncomfortable that I asked my best friend to walk the routes with me until I quit the job. Another year passed. I turned 18 without having heard from Jonas. My mom told me he was in a home for the mentally challenged teens where a friend of hers worked, and that's why we wouldn't see him around until one day in June. I walked to the next village because there's a store. I had no car at the time. I needed some stuff and was carrying a rather heavy bag. It's not that far from the store to my house, and I always use a shortcut. Some stairs up to the village next to the pasture that was close to the woods where we had built our treehouse. You had to cross a river, and from the stairs you could see over the entire valley. It's a stunning view, and I just love sitting there and enjoying nature. So when I came closer to the river, I noticed someone approaching me and soon realized that it was Jonas. He came closer to my direction. I greeted him, as it's considered impolite not to greet here, and went my way. When I crossed the river, I felt this odd tingle on my neck and turned around. He was standing right where I greeted him, staring at me. I turned around and entered the short way through the woods to the stairs. As I looked through the trees, he was still standing in that exact same spot. I felt the need to hurry. I reached the stairs, looked back, and he was still standing there. But suddenly he started running into my direction. I froze for a moment as I couldn't believe what was happening right now. When he entered the shortcut, I gained control over my legs and ran up the stairs. 2 women with a dog were walking by. I just said hi and continued running home without looking back. 1 hour later, someone knocked on our door and my mom answered it. She called my name and asked me to come to the door. Some people were here to see me. I recognized the 2 women with the dog. One was apparently the mom of a classmate from grade school. That's why she knew where I lived. They had brought a man who told me that he was a police officer, also living in the same village, and the 2 women saw Jonas running after me, that I looked scared and that they were worried. If I knew who he was and if he did something, the police should take action. I told him that Jonas just scared me by suddenly running after me, but nothing happened. He gave me his phone number and address, and if something comes up, I should tell him right away. 2 weeks later, I received a message via ICQ from an unknown user. He started insulting me, asking me for nudes, threatening me, and telling me that he was sad and lonely and just too scared to talk to me in person. I printed the chat logs and went to the officer's house. He took them and said that he would look and see what he can do. It turned out that it was in fact Jonas who did it. He had to go to a psychiatric home, and I haven't heard from him or seen him since then. I now live in another city, and I hope that I won't see him again. I was around 10 years old at the time. My parents took me to Washington and Oregon for camping and exploring during my summer break. We were walking along a trail where there was this abandoned bunker that, if I remember correctly, was open and you could climb down inside. I don't think it was supposed to be open, but the bunker itself isn't relevant to the story. I would never climb into a dark, freaky bunker even as an adult. It's just how I remember that trail. For some reason, even at that age, I've always enjoyed going off on my own and exploring. I wandered off on my own and found a less used trail leading further into the forest. I followed this trail for around a quarter to half a mile and came into this very small clearing with a big rock in the middle. The clearing was still gloomy because it wasn't big enough to allow light through the trees. It was basically just a widened part of the trail. I walked up to the rock because there was something on it. Sitting on top of the rock was a pile of bloody entrails. They were fresh and wet. At first I was sure it had to be a hawk or an eagle that left it, but it was just too much guts for any prey that they could take. There was no fur or feathers, no head, no other leftovers, just bloody guts. They would have filled a plastic grocery bag. I immediately got the heck out of there and ran back to my parents. To this day I try to rationalize it. Maybe it was a hunter? No, this was an illegal hunting area. There was no blood trail or any of the remains. The rock that the stuff was on was not smeared in blood or anything, so the guts weren't removed in that location. It literally looked as if they were just placed on that rock, and whoever or whatever did it gently. There was no blood splatter, as there should be if the guts were tossed or plopped down on the rock. I still get a bit freaked out when I think about it. I've seen plenty of hawk and owl leftovers to know it when I see it. I have also seen plenty of skinning and gutting that hunters do to recognize their leftovers. Another way I tried to rationalize it was the idea that maybe some hunter brought deer guts out there to let the animals have it, and that's the one that I stick with to make me feel more comfortable. But to be honest, I still have questions. It wasn't really a good spot to feed scavengers. The rock was pretty tall and steep for medium-sized critters like skunks and raccoons to climb up. They could have tossed the guts into the forest or at least on the ground, and who would carry those guts all the way to that specific spot? And now I've lost my rationalization again by thinking about it in detail. Great. Anyway, that's my randomly stumbled across some gut story that I haven't thought about in a long time.